All right, I'm excited to be joined by Nick Pollard. You may know him as the People Displeaser. Nick, thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's always fun to do these.
Absolutely. So, quick funny story on how we got here. I listened to your podcast with Chris Williamson on Modern Wisdom. What was it, a month ago you did that? Maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we recorded it in December, but yeah.
Yeah, planning, smart move by those guys, planning ahead. But I was listening to it, and I don't know why, because they do, guys like him do so many podcasts every few days, and you can't listen to them all. But for whatever reason, I saw the title, and I was unfamiliar with you, the People Displeaser. I'm like, I'll check this out. And you were
Sure.
talking about what being a people pleaser is, and I almost freaking drove off the road. I was like, oh my god, I think I'm a people pleaser.
Oh,
And
God.
and we'll dig into all that stuff. But then I posted a thing on my stories and tagged you and all that stuff, and been sharing the podcast with people. And you were kind enough to message, and then here we are. So it's pretty cool.
Sure. Well, I'm glad
So
to do it, man. It was, that was a funny day. I woke up on January 3rd, and I had intended at the time to twilight my one-on-one coaching program, but Chris's podcast had other designs on my life, it seems.
I bet.
And yeah, so
I mean,
it's been,
you're
up to my eyeballs ever since.
blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me. And I see you've got a Gronkowski jersey, so that's a win for me.
Absolutely. So we were talking before. You're in Denver now, but are you originally from the Northeast, or you just happen to be like a New England sports guy?
So when I was a kid, my parents moved us from Florida to Connecticut when I was about 3,
Yep.
and I remember my first football game with my dad. I guess I was like 5 or 6, and he was watching the Dolphins play the Patriots, and he loved the Dolphins. That was back in kind of the Marino days, but the Dolphins lost to the New England Patriots, who were fucking terrible at the time,
They always were.
and
They were.
and they're similar to what they are now. And he was so furious, and I just thought it was so funny that I picked the Pats as my team from then on.
I love it. Being in
Yeah.
Connecticut could have been pulled to the Giants or the Jets.
Oh God, I know. I could have gone so many awful ways and been a Yankee fan too. That would have just been a bummer. Sorry to all our New York fans.
Red Sox Yankees was fun back in the early 2000s, and I just baseball's
Mhm.
kind of got away from me a little bit, but still love the Pats. Are you still a big baseball guy? Obviously, you have the Red Sox tattoo. Always have the Red Sox hat on.
Not as much. I'm not really a big baseball guy, but I think my Red Sox hat says enough. You
Yeah,
know, because the Patriots, I love the Patriots, but I'm not a big fan of the logo. So when I do watch baseball, I watch the Red Sox, but for the most part, it's just football for me.
love football, and I was very out on the Pats up until about a week ago when Vrabel decided to coach. So I am now fired up again and officially back on the Pats bandwagon.
Wait,
So
I didn't hear that.
what do you mean? The
Do
Vrabel thing?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Dude, I'm breaking news to you, man. You must have been in Panama, but
I was.
Vrabel is in as the head coach, and
Mm.
McDaniels is the offensive coordinator. Yeah,
Dude, we're
they're
gonna do some stuff this year. That's amazing.
back together, man. We're doing this. We're going on a run. Like Brady's got to sell his ownership in the Raiders and freaking buy the team from Kraft. I don't know. Well, it's good. I get
Okay.
good vibes now. I'm back. We were at a
Yeah.
low point when we lost that week 17 game or week 18 game. I think at this
I
point.
mean, when we were. I think we finished like. I think we won 4 all year. Gerard Mayo was like terrible. Just an
He's
awful
been over
coach.
his head. Nice
Yeah,
guy. I mean, you feel bad that he got canned after one season, but I'm happy with how it ended up now. So I am back on
sure.
the Patriots bandwagon. So ready for the season.
Josh McDaniels is coming back. That's hilarious. That dude just
I'm,
can't get away from that squad. It's so funny.
I mean, I'll take it. We need some of that old
Yeah,
magic from the runs that we had. So it's good
yeah,
stuff, man.
no
Fired
doubt,
up for the season.
no
Love to
doubt.
hear that you're a Pats fan. I actually had no idea about that before we talked. So yeah, just I knew you had that Red Sox hat on. I thought maybe there was a chance, but
For
here we
sure.
are. So I'm up in Maine, just so you know too. So
Oh, nice.
not
Okay.
not a Mass guy, but Southern Maine. So getting back to why we're on here, like I was saying on that podcast I listened to before, I was like, I never thought of myself as a people pleaser. And conversations with people, they would refer to themselves as people pleaser. I'm like, I don't even really
Sure.
know what that means, but I kind of get it. But the way you described it, I was like, holy shit, I think I'm a people pleaser, and we can get into why maybe that's not the best thing to be. All right, if you've been enjoying the podcast, I wanted to let you know that I am a residential loan officer with CMG Home Loans. If you or anyone you know is looking to buy a home or refinance, please let me know and I'd be happy to help. My contact information is in the description below. Back to the podcast. But would you mind sharing what you would describe a people pleaser as?
I think I think over time my definition of that changes. Even since I talked to Chris, I think it's probably evolved a bit. But really, people pleasing boils down to a couple of core problems. The first of which is you have an inability to tolerate other people's normal negative emotions. So when you think about that, it's like, well, if I hurt somebody's feelings, then I'm a bad person. Is a great way of that somebody that in that kind of vein might feel.
Right.
So when you think of it in that context, it gives way to a lot of things like dishonesty. It gives way to covert contract. It gives way to kind of all these maladies and kind of maladaptive behaviors that create a life where you are overgiving to everyone around you. So you're basically sacrificing yourself constantly and never filling your own cup. And the result of that is almost universally burnout and addiction, and pick a dynamic that you don't want to engage in, and it's probably going to be there.
The thing that got me the most was when you said that people pleasers are always liars.
It's universal.
Dude, I was like, what? And I kind of thought of it as a different way. In my mind, it was, and it might be this too, but in my mind, it was, I might tell people what they want to hear, but at the same time,
Sure.
I think you might have been referencing in the moment as like lying to yourself. So it's kind of like, in either way, you're being dishonest.
Sure.
But it was kind of like an awakening moment for me. I was like, yeah, I think I do that. You know what I mean? Like, I think I do white lies to tell people what they want. And it's like, yeah, I'm probably lying to myself when it comes to committing to things or just situations. It's just.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people go through it. And I honestly, I don't think it would be hard for me to say that anybody was like the only one, right? Like you're not terminally unique in this way, which is, one of those things that I learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous when I was doing that kind of thing, is that kind of terminal uniqueness. A lot of people are very agreeable. Nobody really wants to hurt anybody's feelings. And I don't think that that's negative. I really don't. I think there's some virtue in wanting to love and be kind. And I think there's a lot more virtue to it than there isn't. Right. So when you think of it in the context of, how does it show up? It's where does the line exist between agreeableness and self-sacrifice at a toxic level? And just that's what it boils down to. It's like, I'm going to give until I can't give anymore. And that's just, it's not good for you.
Since I listened to the podcast, I actually listened to it again and listened to some other things that you did. I was like, I don't know. Am I, that line is hard to determine, because I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I am just agreeable, and you kind of try to analyze yourself and all that stuff. And it was good to be aware of that being a thing and the negative things that come along with it. Sure. I think you mentioned too that like most people pleasers are miserable to some degree, and that's not something I want to be. I don't necessarily think that I am, but like the last thing you would want to do is give too much of yourself that you end up being miserable and affecting your family and work and all that sort of stuff. So
right.
Try to want to work against that.
Yeah, I think misery, of course, is subjective, but at the same time, I do notice that there's some alarming trends in that. And it's one thing to give, and it's one thing to love, right? But it's a whole other thing to do that from a place of self-deprivation and consistent self-deprivation. So you can't. I think you don't want to conflate being kind and giving and generous with people pleasing. It's not the same thing, right? So I think that answers your question. I'm not entirely certain, but I think that's where I kind of line up on that.
It just gets back to that thin line. One of the things that I live by, and like my work life, personal life, is the mantra of giver's gain. I don't know if you would have ever heard of that, but like I've convinced myself that if I give to people and give and give and give, that I'll get what I want back in return. And I feel like,
that is a covert contract.
That's a covert contract. Okay.
Yeah. So that is people pleasing. That is people pleasing by its default, right? So if I give and give and give, right? So when you think about what you just said, right? And by the way, most people probably don't even know that you think like that. Mm-hmm. That's what makes this covert.
Yeah.
Right. So a covert contract loosely states that if I meet the needs of everyone else and give them everything that they want and desire, they too will read my mind, meet my needs, and give me everything I want.
Exactly.
Right. The problem with that is nobody's going to fucking do that.
Yeah.
Right. So the covert contract thing is not one of mine. That's actually Dr. Robert Glover's. And I don't know if you've ever read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. But Glover's
you reference him though, so I obviously it's impacted me.
Yeah, he's a friend and he's my mentor, and this is probably one of the most I'd say probably in the top 2 most important people-pleasing books I've ever read. There's 3 that are really important. But No More Mr. Nice Guy talks about the covert contract, and the danger in the covert contract is that you have this contract with everybody around you and nobody else knows about it,
Mhm.
right? So what does that lead way to? Well, resentment, bitterness, anger, frustration, because you're always thinking in your heart, like, when is it my turn,
Yeah.
right? And the answer to that is when you ask.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's
So yeah,
yeah.
it makes sense. So what do you do to come out of being a people pleaser? Like you just flip your switch and I'm just make a conscious decision that I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask for what I want. I mean, I just feel like it could be deeper than that. I don't know.
It Well, it is. So, where does people pleasing come from? I think a lot of people kind of get this is what's the problem, as I see it with modern psychology or pop psychology is, everybody thinks that there's, it's either black or white, on or off. And when you're talking about somebody that operates this way, it's a learning curve. I mean, it's like any other skill set. You get good at anything you practice, including not practicing. And so, it's, even if you think about, I'm not religious anymore, but I grew up in the church, and even when I had stopped being religious, I would find myself praying from time to time, like, oh God, And it's not that I had to like forcibly stop myself or flog myself and call myself a sinner or whatever, but the same thing is true for people pleasing. The same thing is true for drinking. The same thing is true for alcoholism and drug addiction. It's like you get really good at not doing it, but it takes time. So the first thing that people need to understand is that if you've been doing a behavior for, and kind of unconsciously been doing it for, let's call it 30 years. How old are you? 40?
42. Yeah.
42. So we're about the same age. So you've been consciously or unconsciously people pleasing for 42 years, right?
Mhm.
Let's pretend that's a fact.
Sure.
Well, then how long is it going to take you to stop?
Hopefully not
Right?
42.
Right. Well, so and this is really interesting because if you look at over a long enough timeline, they've done studies on this, and I'm not smart enough to talk about it, but they've done studies about how, a positive thought versus a negative thought carries more energy, et cetera, just in
Mhm.
terms of thermodynamics or whatever. I don't know. But when you think about how you change, default living is not nearly as powerful as intentional living. So when you set about the course of changing something, I say, before you're going to have any mastery of this, they say 10,000 hours. I say give it about a month for every year you've been alive
Mhm.
to really
So,
start to, right, to really start to dial in, like, what does it mean to be more authentic to myself? How do I grow into this? Like, in that first 12 months, you learn how to really set boundaries, and you start, being more assertive and standing up for yourself, and you understand your Bill of Rights. And then, kind of from that, you figure out, well, if that's true, then, what has to happen next? I need to start making new friends, and I need to, maybe I need to start caring more, because you need to go through a pretty long period of selfishness, for lack of a better term, where you really just kind of fill your cup,
Mhm.
right? And I think the biggest problem for people is that section, like that first section's really, really hard. And then everything else is just kind of building on the skill set. But that first year of like, I'm going to make a decision for myself every single day. Wow. Like 365 decisions that you're going to make just for you.
what does that look like though for people? Is that going to the gym? Or is
Yeah.
it just like whatever that person wants it to be?
It's,
Like
so Chris and I talked about this too. The fastest way to start getting a handle on this is getting in shape.
yeah,
Like the key to personal growth is getting in shape.
yeah,
It
yeah.
changes everything. Because if you make that a priority and you're like working toward a goal, then you have to prioritize that time, right? So if you think about boundaries, you have 500 different types of boundaries. If you ask personal growth gurus,
Mhm.
there's really only 7, right?
Okay.
But when you think about your mental and physical health, that's a boundary, right? That's a time boundary
Mhm.
that fits in time. And so I dedicate this time every single day to my physical fitness. Okay,
Okay.
well, let's say it's 9 to 10. Well,
Mhm.
I don't take any appointments during that time. So what does a boundary look like? Right. So Valerie, my secretary, will call me and she'll say, hey, this person wants to meet with you at 9. And I'll go, what time am I working out that day? She'll go 9. And I'll go, what's my answer going to be?
Yeah, it's your boundary.
Right.
Yeah, your boundary around that workout
Right.
time.
And so boundaries are really as simple as that.
Mhm.
They're delineators of like what you will accept and what you will not accept, what you'll tolerate, what you won't tolerate.
Mhm.
And So people get all these convolutions in there, and they get all these cognitive distortions around what am I supposed to do. The first thing is you start being selfish with your time.
Yep.
That's the first move. It's like chess piece number one. Pawn moves forward. Like, I'm going to be selfish
Which
with my
makes a
time.
ton of sense. You mentioned being your authentic self. And then another podcast I've listened to you talk just about like, when you're a people pleaser, it's like you don't even have your own opinions. You know what I mean? It's like what does it even mean to be your authentic self? Like if you're a hardcore people pleaser and you want to identify your authentic self, it's like how do you even know what your authentic self is?
Sure.
It's like, and maybe you just got to try different things, and maybe it just starts with time management, and doing what you want to do in certain times. But I
I
just
mean,
could see that being hard for people.
yeah, it's a really huge component. One of the things, so I work with a lot of executive coaching clients kind of all over the world. I was in Panama, and now I've got to go to Taipei. And I'm lucky in that way. I've got a very
Yeah,
exciting and fun life.
yeah,
Um, but one of the first things I work with, especially with my corporate executives and kind of people that are in that top echelon, is this idea of like, okay, you've been doing this default for a long time. What does it look like to invent a new version of you? It's not about self-discovery. It's
mhm,
one of the biggest hacks in the world. Is like you have to get out there and find yourself. What do you mean? Like why find something that doesn't want to be found?
mhm,
Right? It's like I'm going to hunt for a needle in a haystack at the bottom of the ocean. I got shit to do. So if the object of the game is to be happy and fulfilled, then invent the version of you that can do that.
mhm.
So rather than go through this obstacle course of like what am I about, go try new shit until you find out.
Yeah, okay, that's
Right?
fair.
Like pickleball is a great example of this. I like to play pickleball. I
Okay,
don't love it.
now you're speaking my language. I love pickleball. Okay,
Right?
so you like it but don't love
So
it, but it's
yeah,
something. It's definitely
right,
something.
right. Would I play more of it? Well, yeah. So I just found out Denver's got an indoor court. It's a really
Mhm,
cool way to make new friends. I like
mhm.
making new friends. I'm not great at pickleball. I carry a lot of embarrassment because I can't keep count of the because I get so involved in the game that my ADD doesn't allow me to like just my executive function fails me in this way.
And
So
the scoring's
um,
tricky too. So it's
right, it's a,
it,
it's a little weird. And then I got to say a thing, then they got to say a thing, and it's just it's pickleball. But and then there's a kitchen involved. But the point I make is that I have to get out of my own fucking way if I'm going to go enjoy that. Right? I just have to be honest with the people I'm on the court with. Like I'm going to forget the score. So, if you could help a brother out, that'd be great.
people are usually pretty helpful. But
Yeah,
so you identified yourself as a people pleaser at one point, or at some
I
point.
did.
Like,
I
how did
did.
that all come about?
I'd say late 20. Actually, when I really identified it. So
Mhm.
I'd started to play with the idea, I guess, in 2019. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were pretty toxic for each other, but the sex was great, and which is very often true in those situations. But I was making a pretty good amount of money. I was doing really well. I'd just gotten out of rehab a year before that, which is a longer story, a longer part of my journey. But I was standing in Sam's Club, and I really wanted to buy myself a television, and I couldn't. And it wasn't that I didn't have the money. I had plenty of money. TV's $700 these days. Like I had the money. I paid off all my debt, and I paid off my rehab, and I'd done all the right things, right? And I was standing there, and I just couldn't do it and it took like for 3 weeks. I was just going there. At one point, I was in tears. I'm like, why can't I buy this fucking thing? And I went to my therapist, and his name is Greg Morton. If anybody's looking for one in Denver, he's fantastic. And Greg and I were sitting there, and I was telling him this story about how I'd been trying to buy this damn TV. And he says, "You're not allowed to come back until you buy this television." And I went, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Look, man, like you're a people pleaser. Like you don't know how to give to yourself. You don't know how to celebrate your wins. You don't know how to be the person that you want to be. If you want to watch the Patriots on a 70-inch television, making the kind of money you make, do that. You don't go to the bar anymore. So, watch your Pats on your TV and stop, denying yourself these, you know, minor things in life that you could just have if you want them." And I was like, "Well, fine, Greg. I guess I won't come back." I was pissed. No,
Sweet.
right. Fuck you, Greg. Well, 2 days later, I'd done all my work for the day, and I'd made a pretty good living that day too. I was in sales at the time, and my income was high, and I knew it was high that week. So there I was, standing at Sam's Club. tears in my eyes. And I was there for 2 hours.
Jesus.
Yeah, 2 hours. And I finally walked up to a sales clerk and said, "Hey, I'm going to show you that I have the money. I'm going to hand you my credit card. But I need somebody to come get this from here and strap it to the top of my car or get it in my car. Like, I don't care how it gets there. It's got to be on the car before I pay for it." And he goes, "Weird." And I'm like, "Just hear me. Just do it." And he's like, "Fine." So they do it, and I pay for it. I drive it home. And then I had to get this fucking TV off the top of my car, which is a whole other story. But it took me literally forcing myself to be able to give myself a $600 television or $700 television. I don't know what it was.
And it always been like, have you had that
Yeah,
before?
my whole life. My whole life.
Was like,
Just right.
yeah.
Like I would buy I'd buy, I've been married 3 times. I've probably spent fucking $30,000 on engagement rings in my life. And, meanwhile, I would buy myself the plainest wedding band ever. Or, I would never buy the Rolex I wanted when I was making really good money. Or like, I just wouldn't get the things I wouldn't give myself the rewards for my success. And so when I started to realize that, I'm like, well, what the hell is that about? And then I started to think about like, well, where's it all go? Well, it's going to everybody else. I'm like, well, why do I do that? And then in 2021, I broke up with the aforementioned crazy person. Both of us are crazy people, in case she's listening. We're both nuts. I get it. It was good. It was fun, but we were terrible. So when we broke up, I was in a house in Huntington Beach, California. I was in an Airbnb, and I was sober, so I'd fallen off the wagon, I guess is a good way to say it. Now I'm recovered, so it's not a thing for me anymore. But so I'd been on a bender for about 2 weeks, and so there I was. I was at this Airbnb. I think I was 2 months sober, so it'd been Marchish, and I was writing a lot. I was just writing letters to myself, like, what the fuck, and kind of what am I going to have to go through to be this next version of me. And I had this moment. It was like on March 4th, I think, and I started crying when I was writing. It was like, I've never given anything to myself, never anything meaningful. I've never cared about me. I've never loved me, and that's really sad, given how much I've given to other people. And I Googled right then. I still have the laptop. I'll probably hold on to it forever just for keepsake. I Googled at the time, what countries are open. So this is literally right after COVID.
Yeah,
Everything was starting to open back up.
Yeah.
And first thing that popped up was Costa Rica. And I was like, okay, well, I pull out my passport and it's still got stamp room. And I'm like, fuck it. So I called a friend of mine, and she sat on the phone with me while I cried through that. And I bought this ticket. And I was only going to go for 2 weeks. So I booked myself 2 weeks at this Airbnb by myself, and I was just going to hang out. I was going to go to the beach, just be in Costa Rica, I guess, right? And I'd never left the country by myself. And I went. She ended up joining me, actually, and we didn't turn around for 2.5 years.
No kidding. She
Yeah.
stayed too. Wow.
Yeah. She's on my couch right now. Yeah, she's so I think there's a moment when somebody snaps, and that was my moment. Like, that was the rock bottom for me of people pleasing. And I think when you see it, I think a lot of my clients, especially my bigger clients, my corporate executive clients, that part of my practice, there's usually a moment where it's just like shit. And then it's like, fuck, what do I do now? Right. And all too often it's something silly. They'll have an affair, or so people pleasers are historically also cheaters, by the way, which is great. So there's a whole challenge there too, so when you're talking about somebody who's external locus of control and externally validated, you've got a lot of ways that you can really screw it up: addictions, cheating, etc. But I think for me, it was just in that moment, I said, I'm not going to live like this anymore, and I'm going to spend the next however long this takes, I'm going to give to myself. Yeah. And turns out that was 2 years.
2 years of working on yourself. Did you decide to coach in that moment? Like, at some point you made the transition from, hey, I'm going to work on myself, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to learn about it, to I want to help other people. Yeah. Did
Well,
that
what
happen
happened
quickly?
was, so I'd been a coach already. So I
Oh,
started coaching in 2009. I started as a dating coach, and then I went to the Coach Training Institute. And I found it. And by the way, almost every life coach starts as a dating coach. Yeah, we
I
always
didn't even
start
know
as
that
dating
existed.
coaches.
I've been married for a while, so I didn't even know dating coaches existed. But that's
Good for you. So I started out as a dating coach, which is not abnormal. It's pretty normal.
yeah.
And then from that, I moved on to the next thing, sales coaching and executive coaching and whatever. So I knew how to coach, and I've done all the training and all that stuff. Well, I love coaching more than I love anything. It's my favorite thing to do, and I'm really, really, really exceptional at it. And at that time, I was sitting on enough money that we could keep going for like 6 months, and I was getting COVID unemployment checks. So I had a few things kind of happening, right? So we were in Panama. This is back in June. So we left in May, or no, we left April 4th for Costa Rica. We came back, I guess, late April to California. We dropped off some shit, picked up some shit. We figured out how to travel, kind of in the South American kind of way. And then we ended up in Panama for 3 months. Well, I at that point I was like, well, this is what I want. Like, this is what I want my life to look like. And I don't know how to I don't know how I could do this sustainably as an executive. So I'm gonna have to figure out another way to do that. And so I started making videos, with the hope of, attracting a client or two every couple of months.
Mhm.
And that was how that happened. I just started to really move my way toward, what does it look like to have a better, more meaningful existence. And I was like, I'd rather be broke and be a coach than you know selling fucking roofing in Denver.
Is that all you did
And
before?
yeah, and funny enough, now I run the sales department for that company as well. So yeah, well, the coaching is my main part of the business. The owner of the roofing company is one of my very best friends. I've known him for 2 decades, and he finally called me. He's like, dude, please just come fix this. All right, fine. So,
And
um,
like a coaching gig, you're able to. I'm sure you're able to do multiple things at once. You
oh
structure your
sure,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I structure my time very easily, and but so that's how that all started. And really, I didn't have any other employment or any other income for 21, 22, 23 was all coaching income. And I've been exceedingly lucky, man. Like I've like the stuff I've been able to do, Randy, with my life, because I turned my decisions toward me.
Hmm.
And I literally had that moment. I said it to a potential client the other day, and I didn't realize it until I said it. But at one point I said, I'm going to decide for me every day. And that means I had to make 700 decisions that were just for me
Hmm.
in order to break this habit. Right? Because habits are beaten and created through repetitions, not time. So I figured the more I decided on me, the more I decided for me, the more I would develop that habit. Now I'm pretty darn good at it.
Let me ask you this, because I like that idea, but then I think, okay, I have 3 kids.
Hmm.
How do you coach parents? And you primarily coach men. I know there's a few females in there, but you're coaching parents of kids. Like how do you help them navigate that? Because I can't make every decision for myself because of them, which is fine. But like,
Sure.
it's a matter of making more decisions for yourself than you used to, or what would you advise?
Well, that's why I say one decision a day,
Okay.
right? Like, so, and by the way, not for nothing, I coach a lot of men, but the practice tends to fluctuate. I work
That's
with
it.
a lot of both. So for right now, my entire client roster is 70% women,
No kidding.
but all of the coaching calls I've taken in the last 3 weeks have been 70% men. So it's like
I bet.
it really just goes like this. Usually toward like January, February, March, all the way through June, I generally have men.
Yeah.
And then really towards summer, it dies down for me. So like June, July, August, I don't do a lot. I'll get one or I'll get a
Yeah.
client here and there. And then August, September, I pick up mostly women.
Interesting.
It's like right as all
Well,
the kids go back to school is usually when it happens. It's
yeah.
interesting enough, but
Well,
um,
I think the bump recently has got to be the podcast bros from
Jesus,
the modern wisdom
yeah,
pod. So,
absolutely crazy. So to answer your question though, the way that the first, the most boundary violating people that are going to be the urchin spawn that you created, right? And I say that with the most love in my heart for my own 2 children. They are probably my favorite decision, and they're both a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because they will violate my boundaries if I'm not careful. So one thing I work with guys and girls on, or guys, men and women on with kids, is learning how to say no, right? Now, I talked about this on Chris's channel too, which is I play a game called the No Game, and it's 7 days where you have to say no, like straight up no to everything. Now you have rules, like you can tell everybody you're playing the game is rule number 1. Rule number 2 is you can change your mind in 90 seconds.
No.
Right? And then rule number 3 is you can only play for a week. Because if you have kids, you're going to say no like 7,000 times a week.
Yeah. At least.
Right?
In an
And
hour.
it changes that default response is the point. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, Dad, can we play baseball? No. Ask me again in 90 seconds. Right?
It helps you get through the discomfort of saying no. It's uncomfortable to say no, obviously, especially for people
I also think that's a weird one. So I agree with you and I disagree with you on that. I don't think it's actually uncomfortable to say no. I think it's uncomfortable to not say yes.
Okay. I can see
And
that.
I think there's a difference, right? It's like your default response has been yes to everything for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the fear isn't that saying no will hurt somebody's feelings. It's that saying yes will make them hate you. Or that not saying yes will make them hate you. Right.
You know, it's funny. This makes me think of a scenario like, so when, say, a buddy asks me to do something and the answer is ultimately no, I feel compelled to be like, I can't, and give like an explanation as to why I can't do this thing. But then I've noticed with other friends, the answer is just no, can't make it. I'm just like, you son of a bitch. I'm actually like, I'm jealous that you can just say no to me and be good with that without feeling like you have to explain yourself. And I feel like I have to justify my no's sometime. So I think that's probably true about just the difficulty of not saying yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of people there's another one of those kind of cognitive distortions. Is like they're afraid to say no. No, you're not. You're afraid to not say yes.
Mm-hmm. So the no games.
Yeah.
Do that for 7 days and just get comfortable not saying yes. Or working with that. So
a lot of people think that they're afraid of stuff that they're not actually afraid of too, which is very interesting. So you're probably not afraid to say no. You're afraid to not say yes. You're probably not afraid of hurting anybody's feelings. You're afraid of the feelings you'll have when you hurt somebody's feelings. It's a totally different game, right? When you frame it like that, it's like, I'm not afraid I'm going to hurt your feelings. I'm afraid of the feelings I'm going to have as a result of hurting your feelings. Right? I'm afraid of the consequence of me hurting your feelings.
So yeah, I mean, dude, it sounds like it hits the nail right on the head. Sounds like guilt and shame are 2 big parts of this as well.
I'd say they're pretty massive components. Sure. More that toxic version of shame, which is like that I am bad rather than I did something bad or I hurt somebody. So the toxic version of that, the toxic shame version of that is like I hurt people rather than I hurt someone. So
yeah. So your message after you started doing this and posting videos, it obviously resonated with people, built up quite a following over the past few years. I think I heard you at one point over 1 million people between all social medias combined.
Yep, that's right.
Do you ever think that you can? I mean, like, obviously that might have been a goal of yours, but it's pretty remarkable. Could you have ever imagined getting to that type of following at one point?
No. Yeah. I mean, man, you're a podcaster, so it's like, how many episodes have you done?
Probably 140, 150.
140. So you're in the top 1% of podcasters.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like consistency in doing podcasts, yes.
Yeah.
In terms of listenership, not so much, but.
Well, you're in the top 1% anyway, right? So, and you're studying your craft and you're getting better. Chris has done over 2,000 episodes, right? So you're, 1/20th of the way to what he's done. Holy shit.
Insane. Yeah.
Right? I have made 2,700 videos at last count. Right?
That's a lot, dude.
That's a lot of fucking videos, right? And when I first started, I was terrified of the camera. If you ever want to do something funny, and I want somebody to do it on a podcast someday. I want somebody to play my first video.
Go back.
Right, go back and just
Instagram
it was on Twitter. Or no, it wasn't on Twitter. It was on TikTok. I want somebody to just go back to my very first video and play it because it is such a disaster. It was me shirtless in a boat in Bocas del Toro, Panama. And like I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I'm going to do men's work, and that's what I'm going to do. And they're like, and it was this cocky, arrogant, false nonsense that I just belched out because I just thought like that's what I was supposed to do. And what's funny is that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? It was like I had to get out there and fail so big. So my first set of videos, the first ones did a whole series from Panama called Just the Tip with Coach Nick.
Love it.
Like
Great.
it was ridiculous, right?
And
And
looking back, of course, yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. So, there was Just the Tip with Coach Nick, which was a really good one. That was a funny name. It was a terrible series.
Yeah.
And then I did my morning meditations, which were basically me waking up and telling you to fuck yourself. And then, like it was just this, I was just trying so hard to go viral in the beginning. Like I just wanted somebody's, and I was getting like, I think I was getting like 100 views a video on
Yeah.
TikTok. And I made 3 videos a day, and I'm not kidding, every day for 6 months.
Mhm.
Every day I made
That's
videos.
the game plan, right? That is,
Right.
it's like the consistency game plan. And yeah, you get 100 views, and eventually, if you keep doing it, I mean, maybe it grows from there depending on the quality. But in doing this podcast, like I typically would interview somewhat successful people, business owners, things like that,
Sure.
someone with a message, and everybody would have advice around like just taking action, some form of just doing it. And there's
Sure.
so many people that don't take action. Like they want to do videos, they want to do 3 videos a day, but they never actually get to it. So it's funny to laugh at your first video shirtless on a boat now, but like that was that first video, and then from there, I mean, look where it's taking you.
Right. Well, it's been, I think I think the hardest part of anything is the start. There's two exciting parts in anything. Right? So I think the hardest perceived part is the starting gate. Right. So we perceive as getting started is the hardest, where you have to make the 90 videos or the 100 videos to get somebody to even look at you. Right. So I did that for 6 months. And then finally on December 3rd of 21, I had a viral video go crazy on TikTok, and that was it. Like,
Do you remember what it was?
it was the Real Cost of People Pleasing version 15. It was a 68-part series, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah. So I did so many you could have called them trading cards, honest to God.
yeah.
It was like a Pokemon. You got to catch them all. Anyway, and I mean, I could probably loosely quote it. I'll play it that one on a podcast someday too. But
What do you think made that one go viral? Not
the hook.
Message, just what was
It
that?
was the hook. It was the hook.
Oh.
It was like, at that point, I was just kind of calling people out. I wasn't really teaching much. And so I think it was like, you've denied your emotions for so long that you've forgotten that you have any at all. And that's really what people pleasing is about, right? It's like this denial of self until you forget that there is a self. And it just resonated with people. And I woke up one morning, so I posted it that night. I woke up in the morning, I looked at my phone, I'm like, oh, look at that, like 1,000 views. That was the most I'd ever gotten.
Yeah,
I was pretty excited about it, right?
Dude, absolutely.
Right. And I'm like, 1,000 views, that's cool, right? So, and so I go to the office. I took a consulting gig in Florida at the time. And so I go to the office and I do my work and I coach the office staff and I do the stuff. And then I guess it was around noon, I opened my phone, and at that point, I still had the notifications on TikTok on my phone, because I was like, I just wanted to see if people were engaging so I could engage back, right? Because that's what they teach you, right? And I had like 10,000 notifications on my phone. And I'm like, holy shit, what does that mean? Well, I opened my phone, I thought it was a mistake, and I look at this video and it's got like 100,000 views. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then, so that happens. And then the next thing I know, I got an email from a guy who's like, hey, I'm interested in your coaching services. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then, 100,000 turned into 200,000, turned into 500,000, turned into 1 million. And I went to 1.1 million overnight in views. And that launched me from zero. I'd like, the day before I had 1,500 followers, the next day it's 17,000.
No shit.
And then by the
Were you
end
like,
of
okay, we're doing this? Like, I mean, that I imagine comes with a certain level of pressure as well. Or were you like, holy shit, I gotta like step my game up now? Like, or it was whatever. You were ready for it.
I didn't know what to do, and I, frankly, Randy, I still don't. Like, I still have people trying to help me figure out how to create a workable pipeline, and how do I have a better funnel system. And I'm like, Jesus, like I don't know how to do any of this. So I'm grateful that my coaching practice has been successful enough that I can afford to hire some people to help me. But but as I remember that moment, it was like, oh, like people are paying attention to me.
Yeah.
And then, by the end of December, I had something like 27,000 followers, which I thought that was ridiculous. Like I never thought I'd get there. and then it was 50, and then it was 100, and then I didn't change platforms. This is interesting too. I didn't get on Instagram until last year.
Really?
Or the year
Why?
before last. So
You just didn't
I
have an
just
Instagram.
it just wasn't growing, and I didn't, I thought it was useless, and so it was. I guess it was January of 23. That feels right. Yeah, January of 2023. I was I was going to, so I was going to do 3 months in Panama, or no, 3 months in Costa Rica, and then I was going to do 3 months in Asia, or I was going to do the rest of the year in Asia. I got too tired and we came home, but so we were in Japan for 3 months. So we spent 6 months essentially on the road, and I started cross posting. So I started downloading all my TikTok shit and dumping it into my Instagram. Put up this video that I had done like 3 months before in TikTok into my Instagram. I just uploaded it, and I'd said, okay, well, I'll just upload it myself, because if you cross post through the services, that it gets wonky and it doesn't work. So I'm like, I'll just cross post it myself, see what happens. Well, I get up one morning and this damn thing's got like 1.9 million views overnight, and I went from having 500 Instagram followers to having like 100,000 in a week.
Wow.
And
I didn't understand that. Yeah, like the whole stuff. It's all magic to me. Like,
right,
because it's just a new account with 500 followers, and it's like I can't imagine there's any crossover to knowing that you have a TikTok presence. It's just incredible that it would just hit like that.
well,
Insane.
and it's just there's a conceptually speaking, I think there's a methodology. I suppose there's probably a formula that I'm not great at, because I don't go viral nearly enough to be great at it. But I go viral about every 6 months. I get one that'll go 600 to 2 million, and that grows my following by 50 or 60,000. And if I do that consistently over a 5-year timeline, I'll have 2 or 3 million followers. I mean,
it's awesome.
Totally. It's just a matter of just keep growing. So
you had a video on, I forget exactly when it was, but I wrote it down because I actually thought it was very simple and straightforward. But it said, everything you want is hidden behind the thing you keep refusing to do, which was very simple, or some variation of that. Does that ring a bell for you? Hopefully it does.
Say that one more time.
It was, everything you want is hidden behind the thing you keep refusing to do.
Yep.
And I was like, Jesus, I'm like, yeah, man. You know what I mean? Like, so I do mortgages for a living. And that's been great. I've been doing it for a long time. It's all fine, but like there's certain things that I don't want to do, and it's like, yeah, if I just did those things, that would probably change my business. And it's like that for everybody in business and life. And it was just like a very straightforward type thing. So it's like, how do you come up with that stuff, man? Like it's just like just through your research and reading and just principles that you've established yourself.
So I read a lot. So you'll laugh, or you may not laugh. This may be irritating, but I don't script my work.
Swing it.
So I go out with whatever's on my heart. So I do a thing. It's a little wonky. I haven't told anybody this, but I do what's called invoking the muse. Okay. So there's a poem I read. I think it was Odysseus that wrote it. That's about invoking the muse, and I do that before I go out, and I just kind of open my mind to whatever's out there for me, and I just go take my walk, and whatever comes up is what comes up. It's very often, I say invoking the muse, but it's also very often what I've been reading, right? So, if I'm reading a lot of Alfred Adler, you're going to get a lot of Adlerian psychology. If I'm reading a lot of Robert Glover, you're going to get a lot of Glover's work. But, at one point I read Atomic Habits. And I read one that pissed me off, or that pissed off everybody recently. It was called Bad Therapy by Robin Schreier. Really a good book, by the way. It's tremendous read. Even better listen, frankly. But when I read that one, I did a bunch of content that pissed everybody off, because it's really contrarian to modern psychology, which is everybody's a victim and all that shit. So I think but I will say this, that's potentially annoying for me, is that if I want to make content, and I want to make good content, the only way for me to do that is to make content. And so like if I go out 3 days in a row and I make content, day 4 is fucking easy.
Yeah.
Day 5 is like 90 minutes. But like days 1 through 5, like day 1 through 3, shit, I'm out there for 2.5 hours just trying to get one video.
Just walking and talking, just trying to find something that works.
Trying to find a rhythm, just trying to find something. And, very often I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And
But I mean,
Yeah,
the ones that I've seen, there's always like a great nugget in there. So that's kind of the side of things people don't realize, that you're out there doing that. Like it's just part
sure.
of, in a sense, you're a content creator besides being a coach, and in a sense, kind of just like an
Yeah.
online persona. But yeah, that's the
So
thing. People think you just walk out there, grab your phone, and record one of these things in a second. But
yeah, I mean, it takes. So I record. So if I take a walk, I usually walk 5 miles. I record most of that time. Right now it's 1 degree in Denver, so you guys kiss
is
my
it
ass.
really?
But yeah, I'm playing reruns right now. Fuck off. I hope this isn't a family show. But so uh, I walk about 5 miles. It usually takes 90 minutes to 2 hours, and then I come back and I edit. Although recently I've hired an executive assistant that does my editing, so that's so much
Game
better.
changer.
Oh
I mean,
man,
I
it's
edit
just so much
myself,
easier.
so I know what that's like. I can understand that.
Yeah, it's just so much easier. It makes my life so much better. So right now I'm a little behind. I don't have anything extra coming out. So I'm actually doing a batch today where I'll just go out and repurpose a bunch of stuff. But that's how I do it, is that, I dedicate my time. My walking time is for me, but it ends up being about you. So it's like, I don't think people know that to be a good content creator means that you're your own therapist. And like most of the videos I put out for me. I'm a person that's been pretty deeply hurt in my life. I've had some really profound pain, and that doesn't make me special. There are a lot of people that have hurt worse than me, but it's true. And when I go on those walks, it's about me, and very often I'm talking to me. When I wrote that video, that everything you want is behind the thing that you keep refusing to do. That was to me, and it was about me losing weight. And I've been really frustrated over the last year with my own fitness goals and my own weight loss, and the things I wouldn't. It was more about what I wouldn't do than what I was to stop doing. And it was like I
You
wouldn't
mentioned
track my
counting
calories,
calories, I think.
right? Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
count
like
my calories, and right, I
yeah,
wouldn't take my walk, and like I
yeah.
wouldn't make the commitment to do the thing for myself that I wanted, but I continue to complain. So it's like, if you have a complaint and it's a consistent complaint, and you always have that complaint, there is something that you're not doing that is continually making that a part of your life. If you can identify that and fix it, then you are also responsible at that point for no longer complaining,
Mhm.
right? And so I don't think I've ever said it on a podcast. So I'm going to say it here because you're a Red Sox and Patriots fan, and I trust you. I get shit on a lot for what I say on my channels,
Mhm.
and people really take pot shots at me, take a lot of swipes at me. And to that I say, you do you, because I'm just like anybody else out there healing and trying to find my way and be who I want to be. And if you don't like that, I don't give a shit.
Mhm.
Because it's not about you. And I think we live in a profoundly selfish world where everybody thinks everything's about them all the time.
Mhm.
It's just not how life works.
That must be hard to get to that point that you feel that way, which is the right way to feel about all these people coming at you. But I mean, dude, I can't
It,
imagine at first. It probably weighs on you a bit.
dude, it sucks. That's
Mhm.
the thing. Nobody tells you about the content creation games. Like, somebody's going to hate this podcast.
Yeah.
You and I are going to get shit on for what I just said. I
Mhm.
promise. There's no
Yeah.
question. Right? You chop this up and put it on your channel, we are getting shit on. I promise. And that's fine with me. But nobody really tells you that. But I learned recently. I was watching an Alex Hormozy thing, which I love Alex. If you've never watched his stuff, but
Love his stuff, man. Read his
he's a
book.
he's comical, and he's really intelligent,
Mhm.
way smarter than me at 10 years younger than me. And I started using all of my negative comments as my marketing material,
Mhm.
and it's been absolutely comical. So like now when I just saw one on my Meta platform, it was like, fuck this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. This is why coaches are bullshit. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So I will go and comment on that in a minute, and it will say, hey, I appreciate the comment. Your comments allow me to get more engagement, and including showing this to your friends and family.
Yeah. There you
Here's a
go.
copy of my Bulletproof Boundaries Guide. You're probably going to hate it worse. Right? And And it's
Good way to turn it around, man.
right. And it's so, because I don't even do it anymore. Like I got to a place where I just I hand it to my executive assistant. He just does it. And for me, it's like, if you're going to hate somebody on the internet for the noises that come out of their face, that's definitely not a me problem.
Yeah. People online are insane.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, in terms of hate, it's Facebook number one, by the way.
really.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know why the Facebook crowd hates my guts.
That's really interesting, dude. I thought Facebook was like all old people. Like I would think that
That's why.
I mean, I guess that could be the case.
Well, think about my audience, right? My audience is going to be that kind of Gen X, late stage millennial who raised all of these victim kids, and so everybody's a victim. Well, no, that's not true, and so I get a lot of hate online. Some from men. I'd say 60%, 70% probably of my haters are women.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's not surprising, but that's Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, my most loving community.
So weird.
By a lot, like landslide margins. Just, I love you. I love your stuff. You're great. I'm like, oh, you guys are great. Then I get over to Facebook
Absolutely.
and it's like, you malevolent piece of shit.
That is so funny. I wouldn't even think of those differences.
Well,
But
TikTok loves me too. TikTok loves me. Facebook loves me, or Instagram loves me. But the people that love me on Facebook, this is even weirder. The people that love me on Facebook will defend me to the death.
yeah,
They are more loyal than any other base. So like somebody will comment and say I'm a piece of shit, and they will just get roasted. Just
like
cooked.
You have to come up with a name for your people, man. For your ride or die people, for your
Right.
your crew. Displeaser Nation,
Yeah, I should. That's a good idea.
What's next for you? Like, is it just keep going down this path? Is there podcast yourself, books? I don't know. Just what's next?
So I have 2 books in the making. I wrote one proposal and I sent it out to a bunch of publishers, and it didn't go anywhere. And that surprised my agent. It surprised my collaborative ghostwriter. It surprised everybody because it's exceptional. It's a really good book, and it will be. And I will still write it. But I'm an asshole. So when I heard what I heard, which was, so basically my publishing agent said, a couple of problems here. We get it out in front of them. They say, hey, we love the voice on the page. We love the storyline. We think he's great. Awesome following. But we don't know how to break it out. And apparently that's publishing lingo for, I don't know how to make this into a bestseller.
Okay.
And and I'll be careful how I say it. No, I won't. There's a component of this that both my agent and my collaborative writer have said, you're another pasty white guy giving advice.
Okay.
So there may be some truth to that. I don't know if that's...
I would think your following speaks for itself to some degree, right?
That's what I thought. Right.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not a conventional writer. So the second book I wrote, I'm halfway through it. So it's not even a proposal. I'm just writing it. Is a hit piece on the personal growth world. And I call it Life Coach Confidential. And it is absolutely brutal and hilarious. I think it's my favorite thing I've ever written. And I'm whittling it down to 10 chapters. And once it's kind of dialed in, I did some interesting things with it that I really like. So it is a personal growth book. It's kind of a satire personal growth book. And then I do give some actual advice toward the end and vignettes at the end of every chapter. One of the things that always pissed me off about personal growth literature is that they bury the work in all the stories. And I'm supposed to just ferret out of it somehow or another how to, so it's all this feel good, bubblegum bullshit. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that. So like, I'll read a Tony Robbins book and I'm like, just tell me what to fix. Like, give me the prescription and I will go do the thing. And so I took all of that hatred and I plugged it into this. And I have now formulated an entire calendar of things that you should do based on the chapters to improve your life over a 365-day timeline. It's like, do this day and then do right. And by doing that, I actually give something that you can go and accomplish. Right.
I know that feeling of reading a book and being like, okay, now what, and I forget all the things that I really enjoyed in the moment. So to have a book that you get a game plan with it's
going to be a lot of fun. So I've got the book coming out. I'm still doing my boundary boot camps. I still have one-on-one coaching clients. And I'm very lucky, man. Like Randy, I've had I had a really rough life until I didn't, and I hope that's the message that people get from me mostly is like, I know that I'm the people displeaser. I know that I'm a snarky weirdo. I know that I make people laugh and I make people cry and I make people mad and I get all that. But I think the message I want people to really hear from me, and I hope that outlasts me, is that it doesn't really matter where you are. Like, where you're going can be changed. And, that's coming from a guy who had a 2 bottle of vodka, gram of cocaine a day habit. Like, I was
Yeah.
in bad shape. When I checked into detox, they thought I was dead. So they were afraid they were going to put me on fluids and like knock me out to get me to detox properly. And coming back from that, I'm able to sit fully self-employed. I travel the world when I like. I've designed my life the way I like. I don't own a lot of stuff. I have a beat up old car. I live in a cool apartment that I get a good deal on, but like, my life is good. And 5 years ago, I was crying in my mother's basement because I couldn't afford to pay rent. So, like, everything you want is truly on the other side of the shit you won't do. And more than that, it's on the other side of a 5-year timeline.
It's good stuff for people to hear, man. It's good. Thank you for sharing that stuff. I'm gonna have to wrap it up.
Sure.
So I was hoping that you could share the best way for people to find you, get some of that
Easiest
stuff out there.
easiest place to find me is at the People Displeaser on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. Like, that's the easiest way to find me. And if you Google Nick Pollard, the People Displeaser, or just the People Displeaser, I'm the first thing that's going to show up. So I'm easy to find.
Oh, dude. Nick, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. I really, really enjoyed this. I'm a huge fan of yours. I'll be sharing all your info with everyone I possibly can. So thanks for doing it.
My pleasure.